Let's welcome in Michael Bratton, that SEC podcast, into the program now. Michael, before you came on, we played the clip that you specifically clipped out of Barry Odom talking about Sam Pittman and coaching under him. At some point in time, Briles and Odom are going to believe, based on what they've said to this point and their willingness to say it now year 3 of the program, how attractive do you think jobs that come open in Arkansas are going to be to prospective college football coaches?
Yeah, that's a good question, Ty. Thanks for having me on. But, as long as Sam Pittman continues to, the way I understand it, I mean, Barry Odom's basically the head coach of the defense, and Kendal Briles is the head coach of the offense. And I think that is very attractive because I know across the SEC a lot of coaches kind of pitch it to coordinators if that's what it's going to be, but then it ain't long before old Jeremy Pruitt sticks his hands in the offense at Tennessee, and we get 3 years of Jarrett Garantano. So that's a tale as old as time, and I've not heard that from Coach Pittman doing that at Arkansas. So I think that goes a long way, as well as I think the most important thing that Barry Odom said there is the culture that is being built at Arkansas. It's not something that's unique to Coach Odom. I think a lot of people have felt that inside that building, and I think that's a huge reason why Arkansas so quickly has turned around.
Mike, you and Cousin Shane are really confident that Arkansas is going to get over 6.5 wins this season, so 7 or more. What leads you to believe, even with this incredibly difficult schedule, that they're going to get that win total or even more?
Yeah, I'll tell you this, Ty. I don't know. I apologize for not knowing this, if gambling is legal in the state of Arkansas, but it is here in Tennessee. And the sports book, the first one to put the SEC odds out was the Win book in Las Vegas. And as soon as this number came out, I registered with the Win sports book and put money on Arkansas over at 6.5. And I just think it's comical to think that Arkansas is going to lose half their football games. And I'm not saying that's what they think, but there's just no way that I see that happening. I mean, Cincinnati, you look at that and you say, well, they just played in the playoff. But, I mean, come on, they got worked as soon as they faced a real opponent. So I don't think Arkansas is in any danger there. But, there's only 2 or 3 games that I see Arkansas having real trouble with. And that's, of course, Alabama, A&M. And, 8 or 9, 10 win season, I think, is once again in the cards, because I think I understand how big of a loss Traylon Burks is going to be, but I really got confidence that KJ Jefferson is going to take that next step in his game. I think Arkansas's running attack could be even more dangerous than it was last year, and heck, they led the SEC in that category. So I love what Kendal Briles brings to this system, and I knew this going in, but you research all these teams, you kind of forget some things. This is the first time he's going to have his quarterback back for the last 6 or 7 years, all the jobs he's been. He always has a new quarterback. He always gets them ready to play. So I cannot wait. The last quarterback that Kendal Briles has worked with back-to-back years, I don't know if you know who this is, Ty. It's a guy by the name of RG3, and he won the Heisman Trophy. So I'm not sitting here saying KJ Jefferson is going to win the Heisman, but I do think he is a legit candidate, and I think he's going to have his best year yet. So, yeah, I'm buying heavy on the over.
Michael, this is Tommy. We talk about culture and what Sam Pittman's created here, but let's be honest, it's been based on fairly low expectations to this point. Cultures shift and cultures change, and people tighten up a little bit as meeting expectations, which is always job one, anything you do in life, as those get lifted. We got to realize that the expectations are ratcheting up at Arkansas. How do you think this program dynamically changes or changes over the course of a few seasons as people are starting to expect 8 and 9 wins rather than 6 and 7 wins?
Yeah, Tommy, well, that is always the more difficult ask. I mean, it's as difficult as it would have been to imagine Arkansas, going to a New Year's Day Bowl and winning it when Sam Pittman got hired. Mm-hmm. That was not even the most difficult ask. The most difficult ask is what you're hitting at here. How do you take this and be a 10-win program? How do you contend for the SEC West and reach Atlanta? That's a much more difficult ask, no doubt. But I just think that given the players that they have, I mean, I recall when this staff got in place, it looked like Arkansas didn't have a linebacker that belonged in the SEC. Now, 2 years down the road with them, we're saying, my goodness, they got All-Americans at linebacker, and these are the same guys. And I'm seeing that across the board with, I think they got the SEC's best safety in Jalen Catalon. When they have holes on the roster at defensive line, linebacker, in the secondary, they know how to attack it in the transfer portal, so they're doing an outstanding job of that. And, I just think that one thing that I think is a little bit underrated here in the last couple of years of college football with the COVID and the 6-year eligibility that we're having, we're seeing teams that have a lot of veteran presence kind of overshoot expectations where, we all assume Alabama and Georgia, it's going to be a cakewalk. Those programs now are kind of built on just young talent, whereas teams like Ole Miss and Arkansas, they're built more on seniority and experience, and I still see that being the case across the board at Arkansas. So, again, that's a big, big reason why I think Arkansas can continue to build on what they're doing. And, heck, you talk about building for the future. If I'm not mistaken, they got a top 5 recruiting class right now. So the future's looking pretty good in Fayetteville to me.
What are your expectations for Jalen Catalon for this year? Had to shut it down halfway through, missed 6 games with a shoulder injury, has battled targeting calls that haven't went his way. What kind of season in 22 do you think is ahead for really the quarterback of the defense in Jalen Catalon?
Yeah, well, this is certainly a money year for Catalon, so he's coming back to prove that he can stay on the field, and when he has been able to do that, I mean, he's just one of the most dynamic players in the entire conference. I think had he went to the NFL, certainly would have been drafted, but I don't think he would have been any higher than maybe a third-round pick, whereas if he plays up to his potential and stays on the field, I don't see how he's not a first-round pick in the next draft. So he's got a lot of money to be made this season if he does what he can do and stay on the field. So, and given the fact that, I think the last couple of years, you could certainly say the linebacking crew of Arkansas's defense has kind of led the way in terms of leadership. Now it's his turn. It's his turn to lead this defense with a lot of those great linebackers off to the NFL. So I think from a leadership standpoint as well, he's got an opportunity here to kind of seize those reins, so to speak, there in Fayetteville.
We're talking with Michael Bratton, that SEC podcast, better known as SEC Mike, here on the Morning Rush. Mike, I gave you credit last year. You were one of the few SEC/national analysts that had KJ as high as you did. You had him as the third best quarterback in the SEC. Bryce Young's going to be one this year. Has KJ moved up to number 2 preseason in your mind?
Yeah, I think so. Now, I'm a little bit of a Tennessee homer. I'm a graduate there, and I love Hendon Hooker. I think he's going to put up insane numbers at Tennessee. But, I attribute that a lot to the system that Josh Heupel's running. But if you were, going to put a gun to my head, would I take K.J. Jefferson or Hendon Hooker? I think I'm going to roll with K.J. Jefferson. Now, I don't think K.J. is going to put up the passing numbers that Hendon Hooker will, but I think he'll blow them away when it comes to rushing touchdowns this fall. So when I look at K.J. Jefferson, I see almost like Vince Young 2.0. And, I know the last image we have of Vince Young is not getting it done in the NFL, but I'm talking just college football. And last time I checked, when Vince Young was at Texas there, they were winning the national championship in the Rose Bowl against what we all thought was the greatest football program ever assembled down there in Southern Cal. So, yeah, I mean, who knows? Who knows what happens at Alabama? I don't want to disrespect Bryce Young, but by the time the season ends, K.J. Jefferson may not be number 2 in the SEC. He may be number 1.
Mike, I know we've talked football throughout the morning with you, and I know that's what your focus is, but I do want to ask, as a Tennessee grad, what you thought of what Tony Vitello has done with this baseball team. I mean, 31-1, haven't lost a game at home in conference or in conference play to this point. I mean, Knoxville is not exactly the mecca for college baseball, but it sure feels like it right now, doesn't it?
Yeah, and the way I understand it, I mean, they're playing in like a high school stadium. So it's like, I mean, that just adds to what they're doing there. But, yeah, it's pretty wild. I never thought Tennessee would ever be associated with a baseball program. I mean, my 4 years there, I got to be honest, I never even went to a baseball game. I didn't know where it was, but yeah, certainly that is the talk of the town there on Rocky Top and everything they're doing there with the long ball and Mike Honcho. I mean, they got some comic book characters over there. So yeah, they're definitely the pride of the Southland right now.
Arkansas, I just looked at the new D1 baseball rankings, came out in the last 10 minutes or so, and Arkansas drops to 6. Tennessee, as you'd expect, stays at number 1. And there's no regular season collision course for these two SEC programs, but I think it would be a neat story if Dave Van Horn and his former assistant, Tony Vitalo, somewhere met, hopefully in Omaha, maybe in a championship series. That's cart way in front of horse, but what a great story that would be to tell on television to college baseball fans.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, last year there was I don't want to say bad blood, but there was some feuding, fighting going on there. So yeah, hey, I'm all for it. That'll certainly to get a guy like me to tune in. That's what I need to see, something like that. Arkansas versus Tennessee on the mound.
Mike, appreciate you joining us as always, buddy. I'm going to be in your neck of the woods next month. Maybe we can grab lunch or breakfast or something as we get closer to SEC Media Days and closer to college football this season, my man.
Yeah, absolutely, Ty. Looking forward to it.
All right, make sure he brings his wallet in. He'll expect you to pay, so make sure you meet him outside and he has his wallet in his pocket before you eat, all right?
All right, thanks for the tip, Dobby.
All right, there's Michael Bratton with us here on the morning.
Is your number one source for all your betting needs, sports info, and odds. Find all the latest sports developments, including this week's odds for the Masters Championship and the start of Major League Baseball season. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino and poker games. It's super easy to get started, so join today. Learn why everyone is saying BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on popular sports and games. BetOnline, where the game starts.